Welcome back to the Sunday Supplement. Super Sunday at the top of the Premier League, isn't it? That massive games for both 1 and 2. Manchester United home to Everton and City away to Wolves. If Wolves don't beat City, by the way, they go down. Let's start with City, Duncan. Your interesting story here that you've written that they're going to offer Mancini a new contract, but he has to tone down some of his more abrasive nature.
I think there's a sense that there's been clear progress at City this season. They've gone from a team that can qualify for the Champions League to a team that can challenge for the title. They may yet still win it, but certainly the advantage is United's at the moment. So there's a sense that there is going in the right direction. I think there's a concession that there's certain things that haven't gone well this year, and I think one of those is the way that Mancini has handled certain players. And I think
Tevez.
Well,
Balotelli.
I think more Balotelli would be the issue, that there needs to be a sense of consistency so that all players feel that they're being, whether you're a very tough and an authoritarian manager or whether you're permissive, as long as you are consistent across the board. And I think also there's a sense that some of the problems that have happened at Man City, there's a feeling from the club that they preferred them to have been dealt with in-house, rather than go public with them. But, Mancini is actually, in the terms of management, a young manager, and he's growing in experience. And so I think they want to get themselves into a position where there's stability at the club, rather than sort of season-on-season tailspin when you don't get the success you want, so you sack the manager, so you get a new one in. He's got a good core group of players there. The squad does need to be worked over a little bit in the summer. But I think Mancini's the man to do it.
If you're Mancini, though, and the club comes to you and say, new contract, we like what you're doing, but you've just got to change a little bit with your handling of the players, would he not look upon that as something of a slight to him?
I think it depends on how much you let your ego get in the way, really. I think Mancini himself will acknowledge that certain things weren't done right. I think he said so in some of his press conferences. I think he is an emotional character. I think he does have that passion and sometimes anger, and I think he would need to learn to control that maybe a little bit more in certain situations. But that comes, I'm sure Ferguson thinks, looks back at what he was like when he was a lot younger and thinks, well, I've mellowed a lot from that point. So, I think there's a sense at City that this is not perfect by any means, what's happened this season, but we're on the right path.
Do you buy into Mancini this week saying that certain clubs get the big decisions?
Well, he's obviously looking at United recently, and they have got some big decisions go for them. People say it evens it out. I don't know. Does it even itself out over the season? Man City might think not. Well, just going back to Mancini, I just think he's remarkably honest, isn't he? He's honest with us in press conferences, which is great for us, and he's quite honest on the touchline. I almost think he needs to develop a bit of a poker face. He kind of reacts to everything. One minute he's slumped in his chair and he's kind of shaking his head and he looks as though he's given it up. Then the next minute he's up and he's giving it all this. And, great pictures and great for us, but I wonder how the players are thinking when they're out there on the pitch and they're looking at the touchline and the manager's kind of up and down like a jack in the box.
But imagine how they change their kind of persona, because you think back to Mancini as a player, this kind of languid style and the talent and the kind of player, who could turn it on whenever he wanted, which he chose to do. But he wasn't the most consistent player, although he was undoubtedly a top talent. As a manager, he demands 100% commitment, concentration, desire, all those things that looked as though they were missing from Mancini as a player. He's now assumed that role as a manager, but he enjoys the volatility, doesn't he?
He does. Do you think he's being honest about that some clubs get the big decisions, obviously United, or is that just being
I can understand the frustration, that it's very easy, isn't it, to point a finger at Ashley Young at the moment, isn't it, and say that's the guy who's won Manchester United the title. Well, no, it isn't. Not over the course of a season. Okay, there are moments in matches where, certainly in Ashley Young QPR and last week against Aston Villa, of course, but that's not changed the course of the title. The shift in balance and the power was after Manchester City beat United so handsomely at Old Trafford. They then couldn't win an away game. They forgot that they could flood forward and score goals. The problems that they've had in their dressing room and with the players, the kind of players that they've got, not only Mancini abrasive, but some of those players are as well. So they will have to change that. They'll have to refine that, particularly next season, if they're going to go and win the Premier League if they're going to challenge at the top end, the high end of the Champions League as well.
I think the strikers is a big issue because they've actually, the second half of the season, the stats are incredible how far off they've fallen from scoring. You know, they're scoring very freely in the first, well, even 2/3 of the season, and then in the last few weeks they've struggled to score quite as often. And when Aguero
Apart from
was
the
out,
last two games.
apart from when they've come back, Aguero's come back into the team after that.
Aguero and
ankle
Tevez
injury,
together.
and he's looked very, very sharp. Now, part of that, there's been disappointment that Dzeko hasn't really delivered as we might have expected for a player with the reputation that he came with. And Balotelli was good early in the season, but became more self-indulgent and less effective on the pitch as the season wore on. And obviously, they were without Tevez for large portions of the season. So I think, you know, Ferguson used to say that you needed 4 top-line strikers to win a title, and I think that's the position that City are going to look to try and get themselves in over the summer by, you know, selling a lot of these players and working with to give Aguero the support that he needs so that City can score more freely.
Neil mentioned Ashley Young there, the diving. Were you surprised that Fergie actually admitted that you had a word with him about the theatrics?
I was a little bit, because I thought he would just kind of try and bat it off, but he didn't really